Over the last few months, I've gotten heavily into the Risk of Rain 2 community, and it's come to my attention just how much misinformation is floating around about this game. I'll watch streams on Twitch of players that have upwards of 500 hours in this game, and they still have no clue what they're doing. Until a few months ago, I was incredibly misinformed about a ton of mechanics in this game myself, and I'm a Risk of Rain YouTuber who plays this game constantly, so I can only imagine how bad it is for the average player. And I think a massive reason that is because there isn't a ton of content on YouTube that's explaining the game in a way that creates a full picture, so this is my attempt to do that. Let me know if you learned anything in the comment section. I want to start off by saying you shouldn't take what I say here as gospel. With that being said, I have more than 1,800 hours of experience in this game, so I'd like to think I have a pretty good understanding of how it works, but you never know. Atop the mountain of misinformation about this game, there stands a holy grail of sorts. That being the idea that you should only spend 5 minutes a stage and you shouldn't waste time, otherwise the difficulty will scale too high for you to be able to do anything. This is the sentiment that a large amount of the player base believes. This is the most common misconception I see, and I'm going to be breaking down why it's not necessarily true.
Eggy Wicks, I would like to smash them.
Risk of Rain 2 has two dominant playstyles, rushing and full looting. Rushing is exactly what it sounds like, rushing through stages, generally spending 5 minutes per stage. This method of play was popularized by Woolly Gaming and is the most common playstyle I see people using. The idea behind it is by spending a low amount of time on each stage, you'll be outscaling the enemies before they get too powerful. The other playstyle is called full looting. Again, this is exactly what it sounds like, collecting all the items on each stage, min-maxing with scrappers and 3D printers, and not paying attention to the timer as much. Full looting is an underrepresented playstyle, especially here on YouTube. It's important that I make the distinction that both of these playstyles are 100% valid and you should play whatever is most fun for you. With that being said, I do think one playstyle is more effective than the other. When the game first came out, and when I say that I mean pre 1.0, rushing was definitely a formidable strategy and one that was hard to beat. And the reason for that is players had less agency over their runs. If you got a bad item, the only way to get rid of it was to roll the dice on a 3D printer. So taking your time to only get bad items was a pretty big problem. That's why if you look at guides from this era, most of them tell you not to waste time. But when the 1.0 update came out, Hopu introduced scrappers, which completely changed the meta. Before, spending 2 extra minutes on a stage only to get one lousy maraca was somewhat hard to justify as it didn't offer a very big return on the amount of time invested. But with scrappers in the mix, you can later turn that maraca into a tri-tip dagger or ATG, which is absolutely worth the time investment. So what about difficulty? Wouldn't spending 10 minutes on a stage make the monsters outscale you? Actually, no. Difficulty is kind of an irrelevant mechanic in Risk of Rain 2, and when I say difficulty, I'm referring to in-game difficulty scaling. Obviously, Drizzle is much harder than Eclipse 8. I talked about this a little in my beginner's guide video, but I'm going to go over it again. Time does not equal difficulty, and difficulty does not equal how hard the game is, which might sound a little ridiculous, but let me give you an example. If you spawn in on stage 1 and immediately try to fight the boss, you're going to have a much tougher time than if you spend a few minutes getting items. Even though fighting the boss immediately has a lower in-game difficulty, in reality you get your power from items being strong, not the boss being weak. Now magnify this across your entire run. Mithrix may have 1,000,000 health, but if you're doing 100,000 damage a hit, does it really matter? Rolling a pot on abandoned aqueducts for 10 minutes might seem like a waste of time on paper, but you're not only getting 2 of the best items in the game, you're also getting the experience, so it takes less time in future. Additionally, the in-game difficulty will rise anyway just from completing stages, so it's not completely avoidable. And I'm not saying time isn't important while full looting, because it is still a factor. Like I said in my beginner's guide video, you can't just be getting 1 item an hour and expect to have a jolly good time. It's just not going to happen. Going too slow is definitely something that can happen to you while you're full looting. You're just punished for it less than if you were rushing. Rushing is also a lot more picky. You have to stick to it pretty religiously. Like, you can't just spend 5 minutes a stage, then spend like 20 minutes on sirens trying to kill the alloy worship unit. You'll lose all the progress you made keeping the difficulty low. Looping is also frowned upon. If you loop while rushing, it's a pretty big gamble, especially on Eclipse 8. But if you loop while full looting, you'll get more powerful almost every time. Also, full looting, in my opinion, is more beginner friendly. There are definitely people that would disagree with me on this point, but items really are the core of this game, and full looting nets the player more items. And by getting more items, you'll learn how they interact with each other much faster. Also, if you're new, you'll tend to waste time just on the account of the fact that you're new, and you don't know how to traverse the maps. If you are new, don't feel panicked because the time gets too high. It's important to be cognizant of time, but it really isn't as big of a deal as people make it out to be. It's more important that you learn what items to prioritize and how they interact with each other. And I can't just give you a list of what items to prioritize because everything in this game is situational. For example, I can't just tell you the crowdfunder is a bad equipment because that's not always true. It becomes one of the best equipment in the game after looping. I also can't compare a defensive item to an offensive item. It depends on what you already have. There's so many factors that go into a run, and item tier lists are far too simple to capture the complexity of this game. But the best way to learn how items work is just by using them, and you'll get a lot more items full looting than you do rushing. And I know it's kind of a cop-out to say, just play lol, but it's honestly the best advice I can give without actually seeing your run. Full looting really only has one weakness. It's kind of a weenus way to play. At least from a spectator standpoint, watching somebody re-roll a red item on stage 5 for 20 minutes can get kind of boring, but that's not to say full looting is boring as a whole. There are just a few aspects of the playstyle that are less engaging than rushing, and that goes the other way around too. So which one is better? It really depends on the person and how you play the game as an individual, but I would say full looting is more effective than rushing as a whole. And yeah, I'm biased, but whether you full loot or rush doesn't really matter as long as you're having fun. And if you're on Monsoon and below, you can get results with both of these playstyles. So just play how you want, who am I to tell you otherwise? Where full looting really shines is in Eclipse mode though. Eclipse does not screw around. If you make a mistake, you will be punished, child. And that's not to say you can't get results rushing in Eclipse, I just think it's much harder, and you're shooting yourself in the foot if you do it. And can I just say, if you have not tried Eclipse, please give it a shot. To be completely honest, I hated this game for a while because I felt like I had nothing to do and mods just weren't doing it for me. When Eclipse first came out, I thought it was kind of stupid. I have never been more wrong about anything in my entire life. When I picked it up a few months ago, I basically had to relearn the entire game, and I never realized just how complex this game is. Eclipse is definitely a grind, but it's just so good, man. Anyway, that's it for the video. If you have any questions or anything to add, leave a comment. I've got some good stuff on the way. Sorry I've been gone most of the year. I'm back and I'm ready to pog at you.